Hey guys, my name is Stephanie. I'm the host of Alpha Amplified Podcast. This is the second episode of season 2, and we have a lovely guest today. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Stephanie. My name is Humberto Lozano. I'm the president of Alpha, New Jersey. I also work for Bank of America, and I'm happy to be here.
You've probably seen him a lot at some Alpha events. So I feel like the most important is like to get to know you and be more comfortable with you, because everyone's scared to going to these networking events. That I know I hate going up to someone that I don't know. And so I'm gonna ask you some questions. Like, let's go into like where did you study? Where are you from? Like your ethnicity. Like those little questions about you.
For sure. No, let's jump right in. So, my parents are from Mexico, so that's my heritage. I
Mm-hmm.
have Mexican heritage in my blood, and they actually came here from Mexico in the late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they came here. They were actually one of the first Mexicans actually to live and reside in the city that I grew up in,
Mm-hmm.
which is Passaic. Passaic, if you guys know, it has like a huge history. Um, it's funny because even when I was younger, I remember looking up Passaic like on the internet, like right when the internet was invented a long time ago. But I remember looking it up and seeing how there was a lot of culture in the 70s in Passaic,
Mm-hmm.
New Jersey, a lot of culture. They had something called the Capitol Theater, where it was like a big music venue in the middle of Passaic, and famous artists used to go there to perform.
Mm-hmm.
So artists like Bruce Springsteen,
Oh,
artists like Run DMC, I think a few different famous like rock bands. Um, so it has a lot of history, but essentially, I grew up there, very urban environment. I would say, Passaic is not a big city. There's maybe 69,000 people that live there. And what's unique about it, it's only 3.5 square miles big.
I'm
So,
really bad with like distances, so I wouldn't be
okay.
able to like
All right.
visualize it.
If you
But
want to visualize it, imagine this room
okay,
with 1,000 people.
really, like this is how big it would be in your consideration,
Well,
or okay, like as I'm saying, like I'm like trying to visualize, and you're like
yeah, no, I was trying to do proportions, but I guess that doesn't work.
maybe that's not maybe that
Yeah,
shit.
yeah. But just imagine like a very packed
Okay,
city.
like as big as like Rutgers, Newark, or like even like how much Rutgers, Newark would you have to be? You know?
To be honest, I'm not familiar with
Okay.
Rutgers Newark
Where did you
campus.
study?
I studied accounting.
And where
Yeah.
did you study?
I went to Berkeley College.
Okay, I don't
Yes.
know how big that is either.
Yeah, so it's not a big city, but a lot of history, right? And I think, even in like neighboring towns in Passaic, there were a lot of manufacturing jobs. So it was like a
hmm
very booming city, during the
Yeah.
60s, 70s. But then eventually, it became very, very congested. And
Saturated, yeah.
then, the companies that were once there, they left. They started closing down. So
Mm-hmm.
then that's when it got, I guess, a little bit more, I would say it got a little bit more violent. It got a little bit more negative.
Because there was no like positive growth in the process.
Yeah, because I guess because it was a booming city, there was a lot of culture. There were always jobs there,
hmm
a lot of factories. It was a manufacturing hub, and then once the companies left, right, people were without
And they had to
jobs.
travel for those jobs, but they don't have the means to like drive, and like
Hmm.
the whole process is always gonna play with things, and people
Yeah.
don't see that part. They only see, oh, now it's negative. It has all
Hmm.
these violent, but like you didn't consider the process from it, and you don't want to
Yes.
keep it growing. You want to just move out because you're scared.
Yeah. No, for sure. And for me, I understand the history, so I'm very proud
hmm
on where I came from, where I was born and raised. So I like to share some of these things to let people know too, because I think, I'm sure everyone has heard of Passaic, especially students that go to the school, but
Yeah,
maybe, they don't know the history, and even regular people just don't know the history. So,
they just
yeah,
have
I,
the
li- I like
stereotype.
I like to talk about that. But yeah, I grew up there. I'm one of 7 kids, right?
Oh,
So
what part of you? Like, what are you? A middle child, oldest?
I'm like towards the middle, so I'm the fifth oldest,
Okay, so you're kind of like, I don't know.
like
Yeah.
lower middle, yeah. But yeah, no. So I grew up in a very big household. I have 4 brothers, 2 sisters. Oddly enough, though, I'm very close to my sisters because we're more closer in age.
Hmm.
So we were always together
Playing
growing
around
up.
with each other,
Yeah,
yeah.
like getting on each other's nerves, like playing pranks on each
Hmm.
other, fighting for the TV, fighting for the remote of the TV and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Like, but they're my sisters, and because we were so close in age, we were, we've always had
closer.
a tight bond.
You
Always.
got the fashion from them probably as well.
Probably,
Because
yeah,
like
probably.
people that are like with their brothers, they're not gonna dress up as nice. But I feel like if you have a sister, they're gonna show you like, oh, that's
Yeah,
not cute. You need to wear
yeah,
something else.
exactly. Yeah.
But so I know you were speaking about like your family. It's a big family.
Hmm.
Where would you say your role models come from? Like, where did you get your work
Hmm.
ethic from? Because I know doing both the VP of being a VP in Bank of America and also
Hmm.
being the president of Alpha New Jersey, I feel like that takes a lot of toll on you.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of work, but I would say it's certainly good work, right?
Hmm.
I think when I'm asked questions like that, and as cheesy as it might sound, it's really the truth. When you do work like what we're doing now,
Hmm.
it doesn't really seem like work. Honestly, it's more like a breath of fresh air. And the
Yeah,
reason why I say that is because I feel like when you do work, you're putting on
I feel so odd.
you're well, yeah.
Sorry.
You're putting on a role, right?
Hmm.
You obviously get paid to perform and to do a certain task, so
Yeah.
you do have to play a certain role. But I feel like when I do the alpha stuff, a lot of that's very natural. It's so natural. It's connecting with people that look like me, connecting with people that grew up like me, people that understand what we do here, people that I feel like understand me. Like to me, I think it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like work for sure. Um, but yeah, I mean, the thing that I like to do is really just be very natural, be very real. Don't take things too seriously and joke around a lot. That's like my
Yeah.
secret formula.
So with your people you like work professionally, I feel like they would see more of like your normal side then as well, right? Because like your more
Yeah.
personal side. Because
Oh yeah.
Alpha, I feel like you don't like the way you're talking about it. It sounds like you see it as more like you're just friends. You're more like you're like a family in that sense. Because Alpha
Hmm.
Familia, of course.
Hmm.
Because there was a question about like what would the people professionally that know you or like
Hmm.
what would they be surprised about? Like what if they heard like oh he does that?
Hmm. Let me see. Man, that's a really good question, to be
Yeah.
honest. But I'm sure there's things, maybe it's these intricate details that I share. I feel like even with,
Hmm.
talking about where I'm from, maybe they don't know
Yeah.
the history behind of where I grew up or, how my parents came to the country. I think details like that are some of the details that they might not know.
Yeah. Like
Mm.
not everyone's gonna know you at the end of the
Yeah.
day. Like
Yes.
there's always something to learn from it, but it's really what you put out there and what really you feel comfortable with, and like what they want to hear from you as well. Because it all really depends on the right question, in my opinion. Like if you can ask so many questions but have no value in it, you know. Um, but I kind of want to circle back to the ethics question
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like for me, I feel like I take a lot from my mom and what my mom pushes me forward to do. And so, do you think you have any role models that really push you to be the person you are
Yes.
today?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think you mentioned work ethic, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
I think is very, very important. And me and my family, at least, my brothers and sisters, we're always working, like always working. It doesn't matter. Like we all do different things.
Yeah.
Like I have a sister that's in the medical industry. I have another sister that's in tech. I have brothers that are in retail, right? But one thing that we all have in common is the work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I think about the work ethic, I think about my dad.
Really?
Yeah, my dad. He's like a hard worker, for sure, to the T. Um, and it's funny because I was having this conversation with someone else, right? And they were like, we had a question on like on the difference between hard work and being a hustler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like a hustler is very witty, uh, you know, is clever in finding things, like figures out a
A
hack.
drive, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like my mom was a hustler, right? But my dad was the hard worker, and My dad, he was the sole like breadwinner
Or yeah,
in my family. So think about it, 7 kids.
it's hard.
Yeah, and having my dad again came from Mexico. Even in Mexico, didn't really have a lot of
Mm.
education. He had to drop out at an early age to really like fend for himself and to be able to help his family as
Provide
well,
different
like
like
his parents
yeah.
and stuff like that. So he dropped out like I think like in the third grade, which
Really?
is yeah like a huge reality for I don't know how it is now, but back in the day, I think that was very common where my dad is from. But it's very interesting. He came to this country illegally because he had an uncle that lived in Passaic and was like, "Hey, there's a lot of work here. There's a lot of factories here. You could come here,
Yeah.
earn money, take it back with you." Because at that point he had two of my brothers already. But so he decided to come here for a year, work, and then he was going to go
Go
back
back,
to
yeah.
Mexico. But when he came, he ended up working for a year, saved enough money to bring over my mom
Mm.
and my brothers, and then that's how they ended up in Passaic. But again, it was through work ethic, and it was really my dad saying, "Hey, there's very little opportunity in Mexico where he's from, but there's a ton of work here in the States, and if I can start a family here." And have my kids be raised in this country of the United States, they'll probably have a better opportunity, once they get older. And he followed through with that, and then yeah, he was the sole breadwinner. Because of him, we were able to, grow up. We really didn't need anything. Now, we didn't have Jordans, we didn't have like name brand clothing.
Mm.
Maybe we used each other's shirts and jeans, right? But ultimately we never like lacked food. We
Yeah.
never lacked things that were very, very essential for us growing up. So yeah, I got to give it to my dad. And my dad obviously has his flaws too,
We all do.
Yeah.
Like
And I think especially in Mexican culture, right? I want to keep it real for sure because we're on this podcast and we
you
need to
have to
keep
be
it
real,
real.
yeah.
Yeah, I think with Mexicans in the culture, there's a lot of like alcohol drinking and alcohol consumption, and I think that certainly plagues a lot
It's
of a
normalized
lot of
too.
men in that come from that environment. So my dad was no different. Definitely, I saw that growing up. He definitely drank alcohol and sometimes wouldn't come home and stuff like that. But one thing that my brother mentioned, my oldest brother, right? Because we had this conversation, why do we always go to work? Why are we, you know, why us? We're hustlers and we're never just lazy, not doing anything. And it was really because of my dad. Like, despite my dad with his flaws, he was never in the couch hungover. Like, he
He
never
pushed through.
skipped a day of work. Even through the holidays, he would work. He would work on Saturdays. Even on Sundays, he would never be just laying in bed. He would be outside trying to fix a car, like doing something, And to this day, my dad is 61 years old. He still does landscaping work for like his own accounts. So,
Hmm.
he has certain
To keep going
clients he
forward,
goes
yeah.
and at 61 years old. So to me, when I think of a hard worker, I think of my dad. And I think that's the reason why me and my brothers and sisters are hard workers too.
I really hurt. Like I feel like for I see that so much in my parents as well.
Hmm.
Like I used to be very like mean to my parents. I realized that when I was growing up, like they did so much for me, and I wasn't grateful.
Hmm.
And it's normal as a kid that you're like, oh, my parents are doing this stupid thing again. Oh my god, I'm so sensitive for no
It's
reason.
okay. It's okay.
Like, yeah, I feel like I just feel that in my soul. My parents have done so much for me,
Yeah.
and I was so ungrateful. And my both my parents are so driven.
Hmm.
Like my
Yeah.
both my parents when they came here, my mom she like did so much for my sister.
Hmm.
Like, and my sister was not that grateful because she was like my mom left me to go to
Hmm.
America and like, but she still left my sister with my grandparents, and they were able to provide for her and give her so
Hmm.
many things that when I was a kid I was not able to get. And I never said like, oh, I'm so mad about that. Like my parents never made me feel like I was missing anything.
Hmm.
They always did so much for me that like that I never even realized what they were doing. My
Mm,
mom broke her hands basically to throwing newspapers to get us to where we are now.
that's amazing.
Like
That's
all
so
those things are
beautiful.
really, I feel like we don't like we take a lot of things for granted in
Yes.
this life, and like what our parents do to get us here. And I feel like when we go back to Ecuador, like they don't understand what my parents did to get this money. They're like, oh, now they're rich. No, they're not.
Mm,
They do so much things to keep moving forward, and people don't understand that. And I feel like it's so hard to see my parents and see what they're doing for us. And then people to be like, "Oh, can you give us $200?" Like that's casual money. Like
yeah.
that's never something you can just cough up and then be fine the next day. But anyway, anyways, maybe we'll cut
No.
my crying out. um, gosh, I hate being so
No,
like
this is real, and you know what? Like, you acknowledging that, to me, that shows a lot of growth and maturity. And I think even now, I mean, it's like your
mhm,
parents are within you, right? Like this is your personality that comes from your parents and
yeah,
how they raised you. So to me, I think it's fine. Like, and
yeah,
I mean, it's great that you acknowledge it too. There's some people that don't even, and obviously I did that too. Don't get me
yeah.
wrong. Like,
We all did because it's
yeah,
like it's easy as
yeah,
kids, like oh my parents
yes.
being stupid again,
Oh,
but no, they're just being parents.
right. Or you do it like here. I feel like this is the country of consumption, right?
Mhm.
So like we always consume, consume, consume. And I think with that consumption, you also think about the things, like, naturally speaking, right?
Mhm.
As you grow up, you think about the things you don't have versus the things that you
You do
do
have,
have, right?
yeah,
And it takes a certain level of maturity when you're growing up, or when you eventually grow up, to realize, there's a difference between the two, and
yeah,
the one that really matters are the things that you really need. And if you were given that, you were given all the opportunities to succeed.
yeah,
And at that point, it's all on you. It's no one else. It's not on anyone else.
yeah. Like I feel like this, like in our generation, we're not very grateful as well.
Hmm.
I feel like we just want to have everything because, like TikTok, Instagram, like we're thrown so many, like oh, like this haul that I got for Christmas, and you're like, I didn't get that, but they spent so much time to get you that thing, and we're not grateful.
Hmm.
And I feel like as I keep growing up, I'm like, I always try to say thank you to my parents. I always try to be like acknowledgeable that this is their first time living and this is their first time being a parent. And I know my mom is way more lenient than she was when she was with my older sister. And I have to be very grateful for that because I for sure wouldn't be the person I am now if my mom didn't grow up. And I wouldn't be the person I am now today if I didn't have my mom or dad, or they didn't give me a roof over my head or couldn't give me a roof over my head. And like I was always I used to hate moving around, like, but it was what was necessary for us to live in a good neighborhood. Like I don't have a college fund, but I used to go to pretty good schools and have a great education. And that's why I also really try hard in college because it's they did this so like they came here for me, so why am I not going to try and study my butt off so I can get somewhere in the future?
No, that's real.
Like
Yeah, that's so real. Yeah, that's the truth.
it is the truth. I feel like there's like this. I feel like for sure a lot of bottled up emotions for myself when
Mm,
I think about my parents,
mm.
because I feel like we always take them for granted. And but let's move from this topic to let's move more to your professional side of. I when I was like a little doing a little LinkedIn stalking, right?
Okay.
I saw that you worked at a lot of different companies of
Yes.
like Sony. I saw one of them.
Hmm.
Like how was that transition from more of a like technical side or like entertainment to like more finance?
Yes, actually, that's a really good question too. So my first job, my first
Was it the
job
Best
was
Buy one?
working at TJ
Oh
Maxx.
really? You didn't put that on
Yeah,
your
I know
LinkedIn?
I did it. I was there for like 6 months, and then
Oh
I found
okay.
the Best Buy job, and I was like, oh my God, it's so funny. That transition at that time,
Mhm.
I think I was like 18 years old. but I went from getting paid like $6 an hour to $8 an hour at
Hmm.
Best Buy.
That's
And
crazy thinking about like this
yeah,
time
but
frame.
you know
Like,
what's crazy? I thought I was rich. I was like, man, I'm making so much money. Like, it was so crazy. But
and then get taxed like 10% out of
yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah, no, or like spend 2 hours worth of work on just lunch, right? Like,
Jesus, yeah.
but yeah, no. So I my first like I would say real job was Best Buy, and I was there for almost 5 years, and I was there since I was 18 all the way through I guess when I was 23. And honestly speaking, like I was doing that while I was going to college, and I was going to college full time, right, just like anybody else. And it got to the point where I was also working full time at Best
Oh
Buy.
God.
But I would say that though that time period while I was in school learning business and learning accounting, I think something that was fundamental to my success academically was being able to work in that environment,
Mm.
because during that time, retail was very, very popular. And those stores, I remember that store was the first store to do $1 million in revenue on a single day on Black
Damn.
Friday.
Oh,
Yeah,
Black Friday though.
yeah, but that store created like the phenomenon, the enthusiasm. Like I remember, it was almost like a cult working there.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I mean, we used to do like and I think it goes back to the leadership in that store. I feel like the managers there were like some of the best in the country, but it's just like the managers there created culture around the success of the store,
Hmm.
and not only the success but going above and beyond, like not just doing your job but like going the extra
Absolutely.
mile. Like I mean, I remember looking at scorecards, right, and looking at P&Ls and managers in the store, like breaking down what a P&L looks like from a revenue, expenses, overhead. I'm like 18, 19 years old in this store. I see the business. Like I see the customers are getting rung up. I see customer service doing the returns.
Hmm.
I see the salespeople on the sales floor selling accessories that have a higher margin, right, to boost up our numbers and our
Yeah.
net profits. So I'm seeing all of these things, and I have I'm moving this mic. So I'm seeing all of these things, and while in school, I'm learning about what a P&L is, how to
Oh, you
look
already
at
have
revenue.
experience of it.
Yeah, so I'm putting the two and two together, right? And to me, it was like perfect because, with school, I think education is very important. I also think it's sometimes challenging, right? Because it's hard to really understand how to really apply what you're learning in school if you
Hmm.
don't have that experience to be able to, correlate the two. So I feel like with my experience working in retail, it gave me that foundation to really understand business and to
Yeah.
understand even accounting and finance and all those classes I took. It gave me a better understanding.
Yeah, I that's why whenever someone asks me like what do you want to do in tech, I'm like I really wish I knew because I never really got to play around with tech until like I joined like, a program in my freshman year and then I was able to take MIS for free
Hmm.
and it was like I was like oh this is like the first experience of actually doing code and it made sense to me, but I would love to play around with it in the actual real world setting
Hmm.
and I feel like that's probably gonna be the first like thing I'm gonna try to do my internship if I ever get like not if I ever, but when I get an internship, that'll be first like the first thing I'll do. But did when you went to college, was that like were you a finance bro through and through or
Yeah, it
really?
was. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So growing up, when I was younger, and I mentioned this in the podcast that I did with Vanessa,
Mhm.
because we talked about, school wasn't really my thing growing up. I wanted to do other things. And, I thought school was kind of boring as well growing up. But, I was doing what I had to do to pass the grade, right, and to get to the next level. It wasn't until I failed an English class that I
And what?
realized how important school was. And luckily, through that, I was able to take an accounting course in high school as an elective. And through mastering those classes, those accounting classes that I took in high school, I found like my niche. I was like, this is what I'm going to do once I graduate
Yeah.
high school. Like, this is going to take me into college. And so I always knew, like, even before working at Best Buy and
That was
starting
the
my
path you
career,
wanted.
that I was going to do accounting.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I really wish I was like that. When I
Uh
was
huh.
I was like a high school freak. I was trying to do all the best with all
Mm-hmm.
the A's. My mom was like, she would always, cause I have a twin, so she would always compare us. So I was like, I need to get the best grades so I don't get like yelled at. And that I feel sad for my sister because sometimes she would be like, "Why are you doing this? Like she's not." That was a moment. That was a moment when she really cared. And then COVID, she's like, "Oh, whatever. You guys can do whatever you want. Like education, that's your business." But what advice have you received from either a mentor or just in general that really stuck with you that helped you through some challenges that you've experienced in either your work setting or in personal settings?
Yeah, I think if I could think of one, I think listening. I think that's a very very critical thing that several mentors have spoke to me about, and
Mm.
I think the listening aspect is very very unique. Because I think like most people, right, similar to me, I think if you ask my board members, they would tell you this, that sometimes you want to hear people, but you're not really hearing them, right? Because you like whatever subject you're talking about, right? You have your own perception of what that conversation, like how you want it to be,
Yeah.
but then there's what that conversation actually is, and those could be two completely different things. So I think that's one of the things that I've been trying to focus on, like how to be a better listener. And now when I'm hearing things, when people tell me anything, I try to pay attention to like even the words, like, oh, this person said this word instead of that. And I really try to hear the person's intent, because I think
Yeah.
that's very important.
And I feel like with listening specifically, we're so used to responding. Like we already have a response in our head. We're not
Yes.
listening to the person. We just want to be right.
Yeah.
And I feel like that also comes with being Hispanic a little bit because we're like, I want to be right. No, you like because your parents like, I'm right, you're wrong. That's it. But when you have your personal relationships, you have more control to be right. And I feel like I for sure my mom would be like, no, I'm right. And I'm like, okay. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm great. Um,
Yeah, no, that's so true.
yeah,
Yeah, I think a lot of times too, we like I feel like there's ego in everything that we do, and I admit it, I have ego for
yeah, we
sure.
all do.
We all do, right? And it's like, balance how do you balance that, right? To where you can actually be productive, because having confidence, right? I feel like that's part of your ego as
Hmm.
well, but you can get to the point where you're not productive, right? Or, it's not like you're not adding value. So you have to figure out a way to balance that. And I think it's hard. It's
Yeah.
not easy,
Mm-mm.
but certainly listening, I think, is a critical tool that will get you far.
Yeah.
Because essentially, when you listen, you can actually get the actual idea that the person's trying to tell you. And if you apply that to work, the mind frame is that the closer you get to the solution, because when you're at a job, you're always trying to solve for a problem. Like,
Yeah.
that's why you're getting paid money. You're there to solve a specific problem or multiple problems. So the quicker that you can get to a solution, the better it's going to be for the company, the better it's going to be for your group, and the better it's going to be for you, because ultimately you're going to increase your productivity.
Yeah.
And I think that is going to take you a long way.
I feel like you already kind of answered my second question because because how do you use like how do you like how as a leader do you feel in these settings or how do I want to word it? Because like it was more like how do you use listening or like how do you use your flaws and ego?
Hmm.
How do you combat that when you're in a leadership position? Because I know you have been in a few already.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a balancing act, and I would say there is no secret formula, right? You
Yeah.
have to go through with your own personality, and of course, sometimes you want to try things, or you say certain things and you get a certain reaction, and
Yeah.
depending on whether it's positive or negative, you have to calibrate. And I think that's very unique about being leaders in general. There is no
Right.
formula. Like, and that's one thing I also want to share with anyone, especially students, is like, because I do get that question a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like there's this misconception that there are specific answers to how to be the best version of a leader, and there isn't. And whoever's telling you this is the way you do it,
They're wrong.
there, it's not. Like, there's so many ways to do it, but I think the critical pieces is to listen and then also calibrate, because people are different. Like, people are not a formula,
Mm-hmm.
and I could say one word to you, right? And that word could can maybe get you upset.
Means so many different things
Yeah,
to everybody.
exactly. I could say it to someone else. It could make them laugh, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think, definitely the biggest thing about leadership is listening and being able to calibrate to the people that you're working with
Mm-hmm.
or the group that you're leading.
Yeah, 'cause I feel like not everyone's the same too. Like
Hmm.
every person, like what you were basically saying. I'm about to like mansplain your what you just said. Because I feel like now as I take my own leadership role, this is the first time ever doing something like this, and having people that I have to work with. I'm realizing that we have all different ways of communicating and how we want things to be communicated towards us, and it's a really just a learning curve when you're first entering something. But I feel like because you have been in such an experienced way, because I feel like this is more because I want to use your leadership to help any like current presidents in other
Hmm.
chapters, because I feel like anyone's going to be struggling because we really didn't choose our board. Our board was chosen by the last one. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? So like, how do you combat the difficulties of like if you have a difficult person on your team, and how
Hmm.
do you work around it?
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's very interesting because it's almost like it's almost like success, like, as an example, right? Like, if you're on a team, right, it's almost like you would think leadership success is a team that doesn't deal with conflict, right? Doesn't have conflict on the
Conflict.
team. Everyone gets along and stuff like that. And I think that's more like a culture thing. And yes, leadership does play a role in developing culture within a team. But I think the best leaders are the ones that operate like in an environment full of stress.
Hmm.
And when things are not good or when you start from scratch, I think that's where the real development happens. So, and you can't avoid that. Like,
Yeah.
if you're whether you're going to your first job, throughout your career, whether you're going to a different alpha chapter, like, every experience is going to be different, and there are going to be situations where you're going to deal with conflict and you're going to deal with people that maybe don't like you, or they give you a hard time, or they might appear that they're not listening, right? And I say that intentionally.
Hmm.
They appear that they might not be listening, because ultimately I do think that even if people don't like you, I feel like people want to do the right thing. So when there are situations where there's disagreements and people are not listening, I don't think it's really that they're not listening. I think the communication, there's a break in communication.
Yeah.
And I think it's a matter of really understanding where that break is to fix it. It's maybe the way you're communicating to the team, maybe the way they receive feedback is different. So I don't necessarily think it's like, you know, just bad people. I think it's really leadership training and being a better leader that creates the success.
Yeah, I feel like I just experienced that with my committee. Like I there was some communication error on my end, and I learned that they really want me to communicate upcoming events this way instead, and I see that more in like how I want to become a better leader, and it's helping me grow in the process. So I feel like I'm learning and experiencing that right now actually, like I I've always feared conflict, or like I always feared change, and I put myself in these type of situations to change, to experience this conflict, to keep growing. And I feel like we all need to do that at the end of the
Hmm.
day.
Yeah, no, you're testing you're like yesterday's version of yourself, right?
Hmm.
The more you deal with conflict, I think the more tools you're gaining and the more you're adding to your skill set, whether it's leadership, whether it's growing as a person. I think even emotional
Hmm.
intelligence is huge, huge,
Yeah.
because every person, I don't care what anyone says, every human operates off of emotions.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, no, that's great.
We all got a trigger too.
Yeah, we do.
Like there's something that will put like what we were saying with the words earlier. Like there's words have different triggers for other
Hmm.
people. Like their mom could have yelled them out that single word, and now whenever they hear that, oh God, I don't want to hear
Hmm.
that word. No, thank you. um,
That's true.
yeah, I forgot there was like oh, like the simplest question, like how do you get into alpha? Like, like the
Yeah,
simple. Like everyone asks that question. How do you get into alpha?
yeah. So it was
That
really,
should be my first question.
it was really through KPMG. I met a group of people there when I went to KPMG that were familiar with Alpha, and that's how I got connected into Alpha. It's very interesting because my very first Alpha event was like a national event. It
Oh,
was
really?
a chapter leadership summit held in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Damn.
Yeah, and it was Bank of America was the main host.
Oh my God, full circle for
Full
yourself.
circle, full circle. I mean,
Yeah.
going there, my first time in Charlotte, right? Looking at the nice tall buildings, everything looked clean. People were nice. I was like, you know what? Maybe one day I'll end up working here. Maybe one day it'll be at Bank of America.
You're manifesting for yourself. You're like,
Exactly.
I'm gonna work here, but you weren't really fit. Yeah.
But that's how it works. You
Yeah.
manifest it,
You put
right?
an idea in your head and it happens.
Yeah, exactly. And no, I feel like Alpha is huge,
Mm-hmm.
and I see it with students, right? I'm sure you can attest to that.
With what?
The power of Alpha,
Oh
right?
yes.
Like you know,
Yeah.
it's you're drawn to this power, right? Like once you get a little taste, it's like a drug, and then you
Yeah.
need it, right? But I think it's really comfortability, right? You're with a group of people that you have a lot of similarities
Yeah.
with, and then you seek it, right? Once
Yeah.
you find it.
I feel like for myself, I really saw like I can grow from this because I'm a commuter. So I was like, okay, I need to do something. I need to get on
Hmm.
campus some way, shape, or form. And I'm like, oh, these are all Hispanic people. Like that's my culture. Like I should start exploring this. And I'm like, oh, member relations. That's gonna make me public speak because I suck at that. That's one of my things I've always tried to grow upon, and I
Hmm.
feel like I for sure am a lot better than I was my freshman year because I would be hiding in the corner right now if this was me like freshman year. But yeah, I was pretty. I have only really one more question. Like, what would you want students to hear from you? Like, if there's like this one big advice that you can tell them.
Hmm. Definitely enjoy the journey because one of the things I also hear from students is like, how did you get to where you are, or um, things like, oh, I want to get to that level, like, I want to get to a CEO level already, or I want to get to an executive level already, right? But I think it's really a journey. I don't think it's something that
Just
like
happens.
that just happens overnight, right? But I also don't think like it's not something where it's like there's different experiences that you go through that take you to where you're going to be in the 5 years, and all those paths give you the experience that you get to become an executive.
Hmm.
So to me, right, the biggest thing is really enjoying the moment and really taking advantage of the opportunities that you see in front of you. Like forget like even when it comes to being a mentor, like I think a big misconception is that and I get this all the time where I get requests off of LinkedIn how people they are looking for a mentor, right? So that they ping me and they want me to be their mentor and stuff like that, right? Or they ask for me to be their mentor. But I think, right, the right strategy is maybe looking at the next job that you want to have and getting that person to be your mentor.
Yeah, not just some random like just oh he's a vice president. I should just add him. He should be
Yes.
my mentor.
And then in addition to that, you're going to have a lot more similarities and things that you're going to be able to understand by communicating with the person that's just one level above.
Hmm.
And I think that one level above is going to give you like
More.
better advice, right,
Hmm.
than someone three levels above, even 4 or 5 levels above, right?
Oh, wait, get up. Maybe that's what, like, maybe it's like censored. Wait, Matt,
Time
do.
is
Oh,
up.
okay, yeah, per. What time is it actually?
I don't know. Okay,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Okay, if you want to restate your
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
sentence.
yeah. All right. So if there's one piece of advice that I want to give to someone before I leave is, especially for students, is to really be intentional about who they get as mentors, because I often do get these requests, especially on LinkedIn, right? On the possibility of mentoring potential students. But I sometimes think that if there's a bigger intent on really getting that growth and that advice that's really going to help you and
Hmm.
benefit you right now, the best thing is to look for mentors that are just one level above. Or if there's a specific job that you want in the next year or two, look for someone that's already doing that job and connect with that person, because they're going to be able to give you feedback, advice that's relevant to where you are today.
Yeah, I feel it's like more of a connection with them because
Hmm.
all they can really ask you is like about your past experiences, but that's not something you're working on currently.
Hmm.
So you're not going to be well informed about the current trends and just anything in general that's happening in that workspace. So I feel like it's cool. Like, oh, I feel like it's more it's like a cool factor. It's like, oh yeah, my mentor is a VP. That's you wish to be like me. That's I feel like that's more like bragging rights more
Yes.
than like I want to learn from you.
That,
But
I didn't even think about that. I think you put it very nicely.
did I feel like I was a little mean? But
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for joining. I hope you really enjoyed our conversation today. And if you want to follow him on LinkedIn, you can say your little LinkedIn spiel, I guess. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, so you can look me up on LinkedIn. It's Humberto Lozano.
We'll pop up his name for the spelling, I guess, because that spelling is not going to be easy.
Yeah,
But,
for sure.
but thank you guys so much for joining, and I'll see you guys next time.